Join our incredible moms who have mastered the art of balancing motherhood in today's episode of We Time Convo.
My name is Debbie.
This is Liza.
Moms sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and a few hilarious anecdotes. And it all begins now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining We Time Convo. Today, it will be myself. Liza, unfortunately, isn't able to attend in this episode as we talk about dealing with layoff. So I do have a special guest. We have Donna Flores here, and I would like to have Donna come on and introduce yourself as we talk about the episode of dealing with your experience of having a layoff and kind of what your experience was and kind of what happened after. So
Yes.
Hi, Donna.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me, Debbie and Liza.
Yes, Liza unfortunately had a prior commitment. So thank you for coming in and stepping in and joining us in today's episode.
Yeah, no, this is fun. Thank you for Irene as well, hosting a little like snacks in my coffee. The only challenging thing is like I gotta talk and then not eat, but it's okay.
Yes, Irene always makes sure we're taken care of here. So
Layoffs. I mean,
well, it's so relevant because obviously your experience with layoffs was back, way back.
yeah.
But now in today's time,
Yes.
we are also experiencing a lot of layoffs. So I thought it'd be really nice to kind of get your perspective as people are dealing with this new turn of events of layoffs and kind of how do people deal with it? It's a struggle.
Yeah, it really is. I've seen it everywhere. It's happening to a lot of people. I see it on LinkedIn. You know, usually people post about things they do at work. Now it's actually very different from when I experienced it back then.
I remember it was a little shocking for you.
Yes, it really was. It was something new. So
Because there was no buzz, right?
No buzz about layoffs. I was in the IT department. At the time, my kids were young. I'm married with 2 kids. My husband was working. He was not in the tech industry. I was. And when I worked for this tech company, you can say I was young and still naive, thinking like, oh, I'm going to work here forever.
Well, isn't that kind of how we were brought up, right?
Yes.
You go to school, you get your degree, you get a job, and that place is usually kind of where you stay.
Right. I remember people working at IBM or HP. They worked there for like 20 years, right? Going on 20 years or so. Yeah. So I always thought I'm going to be working at this company forever. I'm all set. I can say I clearly remember when I heard it, or when they first told me, but I actually really don't. It's like very long ago, but I can remember the feeling. So
And what was that feeling?
the feeling was when I was told my last day. And actually I was still kind of lucky because I was told my last day would be in 3 months. So I had 3 months.
So you had a heads up already.
Yes, I had a heads up, but it was still a shock. Is it 3 months? Maybe my severance was 3 months. I'm thinking my severance was 3 months. So I was working for a medium-sized company that was being acquired by a larger company.
Got it.
Yeah. And when I was told, they said, your department is now going to be working for a contract agency. So you are no longer employed
With this company.
Yeah, with this company, we're moving you to a contract role.
Got it.
And so I was still working, which was great because when people are being told they're getting laid off, sometimes it's on the spot, that very moment. You can't log in anymore, and, I can't even imagine how it is now because I do have friends that have been laid off after COVID. A lot of people are working remotely. They try to log in and then they can't log in. And they've been working from home.
Well, so
Yeah.
I got laid off back in May.
Yes.
And that's exactly how it happened.
Right.
Now, mind you, they still extended my last day. But as soon as they told me, I literally could not log in anymore.
Yes. They cut your access off.
Yeah, they cut your access off completely. So it's like there's no way. So I would say just, for anyone, I personally should have, and we should, anything that you create, anything that you use kind of on your daily, I would save that template.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things that you create and you use in order to make your job more efficient. And and I would save that template because obviously if you're proficient in a certain role or job, you're going to rely on that. And then also, I think when you start looking for a job, they're going to want to see some of the work that you've done. So you're going to have to think about that. And I obviously did not do that. I wasn't in that mindset, but now I'm in that mindset because I actually never got laid off before.
Yeah. So,
I didn't know.
Yeah. So the day I got laid off, it's a horrible experience, but it's an experience I think everyone needs to experience at least once because you learn a lot from it. And I guess for me, my circumstances is different because I have a husband that still worked. If I was a single parent, I don't know how that would be. If I was a single parent with no parents to help me or family, that's very tough. But in my case, it was something that I'm glad I experienced at a young age. It's definitely a learning opportunity for you. When I was told that day that I wasn't a full-time employee, I was like, what? I thought I was going to work here forever. And yes, I became a contractor. I was still working, but it was you were so disengaged. You were upset. You're like, how can they do this to us? Is it my performance? Am I not that good? All these things come to your head. Yeah. And this is at a time where you're working in person. You work with these people every day in person. I think it's a little different when you're working remotely now. But this is kind of like your friends and your family, right? You see them every day. And then now you all have different roles. There were people that I worked with. So
who was the first person you told? When you
my husband. Yeah.
And how did he take that? Were you upset? Were you upset where you're I just got laid off, and did you cry or were you still in shock?
I did not cry. I was in shock. I was worried. You get scared. You're like, oh no, I lost my job. What does that mean? You kind of think about yourself. Is it me? What did I do wrong? Why is this happening? Is this supposed to happen? You know, because back then, I've never heard of it.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's happened, but I've never heard of it. I didn't see it coming.
Well, it's really different because here you kind of hear the buzz already, right?
Oh,
because of social media, because of all this network of information.
Yeah.
It's much more relevant now that you hear it more real time.
Yeah. And when it was happening back then, I want to say most people were kind of not expressing it or bring awareness to it because I think it was one of those things where it's oh, it's a little embarrassing. This makes me look like I'm not a good worker.
So there was image or perspective.
Right. I didn't announce it to everyone how some people do it now, on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm open to work, Yes. Yeah. Back then it wasn't like that.
There's LinkedIn. A little bit of a stigma.
Yes. We had LinkedIn back then, but it wasn't that popular.
Sure.
Yeah. And
So you told your husband first?
Yeah, I told my husband.
And what was his reaction?
I think it was one of those oh, it's okay. Go find another job. Then it was one of those things where it's oh my gosh, I don't even know how to interview. Because when I started my career, it was you knew someone, they hired you. They kind of interviewed you, but I was never in a real interview
situation.
Environment.
Yeah.
Never. And I had to figure out how to interview. And there was no book. There was no blog. There was nothing, But one thing that my work did provide is they hired an agency to help us update our resume, things like that. But there was no coaching where it's hey, this is the interview game, and how to get hired. I don't know if there was even a game that time that you had to play. Because right now, I feel like you have to play this game.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So now that you found out, now that you kind of, communicated it to your husband, did you right away start looking for a job?
Probably not, because I was in this contract role.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable doing this.
Yeah.
But then it was a moment where I'm like, you know what? I don't like this. Like, I want to be part of like the company.
Culture.
Yeah, the company that I was in before. It doesn't feel like this.
Yes.
And, there was a lot of disgruntled employees on my team. So it wasn't anything fun anymore. And then there would actually be times where it's like, we're at work, there's nothing to do. And you would think like people would love to go to work with nothing to do. But that was the first time I experienced like, this is the worst job ever, to get paid to do nothing.
What?
Yes. I remember being in the office and I was like, this day is dragging. Like all they wanted us to do is be there. I probably...
Because they were figuring it out.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They were still figuring it out internally, like what's happening with the merge between the two companies. Like the company I was working for was acquired by a larger company. I actually do remember that. I think my husband was like, oh, it's okay, just go in, get paid. But I'm just like, oh my God, we're not really doing anything. It's not anything productive. And we're not part of the family at work anymore. So it's not even fun. Mm-hmm. And then when we were there in person. So it was even like,
this is a waste of time.
No, you were like embarrassed. Or people felt sorry for you. Like, oh, like, yeah, I heard, you're not an employee anymore. And I really felt embarrassed. Like, oh my gosh, like now they're looking at me like in a different way.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was, but I guess the employees that I used to work with, and still saw in the office, like we still had that friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that I had close colleagues that would advocate for me. Like, mm-hmm. Hey, so, I did interview, but mm-hmm. not right away.
Were you interviewing for like a permanent job?
So permanent job outside of the whole company.
Okay.
Yes. But I think because I established friendships with people at work, they were able to find and seek opportunities for me internally.
So this is where the networking, the connections that you make at work is something that you could actually rely on.
Yes, it really does work. Yeah, when you are in any field, I think you do have to build, like, I don't know. I kind of remember when I started my career, I kept personal and professional separate. I did make friendships within my own team, but never outside of my team. Like, oh, I don't need to make friends,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something that like I learned, mm-hmm. like you got to just, keep that separate. But then, you've worked with people. So I guess there is like this relationship you have with them. And yeah, the people that I worked with that advocated for me, like, hey, there's this opportunity here. You should try it out. Things just happen on its own.
Got it.
One of the things that I learned from being laid off is just take any opportunity like that comes your way, that knocks mm-hmm. on your door, mm-hmm. even if it's not even something that you're interested in. So I was in IT at the time, mm-hmm. and we were outsourced, mm-hmm. and I was working as a contractor. Then there was an opportunity at the company that I used to work for, and they're like, hey, there's a communications role here. Would you like to apply for it?
So with your connections of, creating a network mm-hmm. and some of the transferable skills that you gained in being on IT, you were actually looking at a job that mm-hmm. was different.
Oh, yeah. Very different. Mm-hmm. And, this is where like you learn to pivot, you become flexible, you just do things that you're uncomfortable doing. Mm-hmm. And I took the opportunity, and that is when I started my communications role. And one of those things where I took a leap in like a big change, and I'm so glad I did that.
Now, Donna, your education and background wasn't in communications.
No, not at all. Till this day, I'm not even sure if I can communicate well. Yeah.
Well,
But-
if we ask your husband and your daughters, they probably would agree.
Yes. They always say like, you're in communications, but you can't even communicate with us. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
So are you still in communications now?
yes. So right now I'm in communications. I've done different roles. So it's one of those things where if I never got laid off, I would not have known all these like skills that I'm capable of doing. Like all these things I'm capable of doing. So in IT, it was one of those like I just talked to my group and then you work with computers. You didn't have to talk to anybody, you know? And I was fine with that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was just learning about technical things. I'm like, okay, I'm fine with this. Then communications is a whole nother world. And as I advance in communications, you learn more about the business. You learn more about different departments in the organization. You see how everything connects. And one thing that I'm learning like now, because I've been in comms where there has been change in the company, such as layoffs or
Mergers.
yeah, just anything like that. You're kind of in the loop of like what's happening behind the scenes of a business.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're not one of those key players that are part of those changes,
Mm-hmm.
you can recognize it's coming.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Because you've experienced it. You've been in the
Yes.
kind of seen behind the scenes.
Right.
So even though now you may not be behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
you have telltale signs of when it's coming
Right.
because you've seen it from the back end.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you kind of get an idea like, oh, something's
It's
going to
gonna
happen.
happen.
Something's going to happen. What's going on? Why did the company decide to not have like pursue something that they were okay with in the beginning?
But now they're
But
putting
now
it.
it's like, oh, we're going to wait or we're
We're
going
gonna
to
table
pause on
that.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that, right?
Now,
Mm-hmm.
Donna, obviously you experienced the layoff and you've gone through kind of this morph into kind of a different career path.
Mm-hmm.
You're still now in communications and communications is just a wide field.
Like seriously, I thought I can speak English. I thought I can communicate when I first started, and then you find out like, whoa, like, you know, I'm actually a pretty good speller,
Uh-huh.
but that's probably the only thing I'm like great at. But then writing a sentence, you would think like your grammar was good, but no, like there's better ways to say something, to write something, to deliver a message,
Got it.
There's a lot of thinking and a lot of practice,
Now, are you currently in the state? So now that you've experienced kind of being part of a company and then being in a place of consulting,
Yes.
are you currently consulting?
Yes. So I'm consulting now, but before I was consulting, I have been laid off 3 times in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And each time is the message of being laid off, does it get easier?
It does get easier.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So-
I remember the first time you got laid off, you were stunned.
Yeah, I was really shocked. But
Yeah,
it was like I was not knowledgeable about how the business works. I was very naive. But the second time I was laid off, you kind of had a feeling like something was happening.
Uh-huh.
And then you prepare for it. During that time, I wasn't converting as a contractor. I had to update my resume.
And really go out and look for a job.
Yes, I had to really be proactive. And I had some guidance that time. So later on in the year, so that was like 2017.
Uh-huh.
Yes, because I'm thinking about like how my resume is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2017, like I had some guidance. I had some support. I interviewed.
Uh-huh.
But then again, it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't interviewed before in such a long time. And then 2017 was the first time I had to do a real interview.
Because all the other times it was because you knew somebody.
I knew someone, got in. It was easy,
so now
easy peasy. And then I thought every interview was like that.
Yeah, no.
Again, I was like naive.
Yes.
Yes. But
So you had to like really prep yourself.
yeah. And the worst part, I think, of being laid off, after being laid off, the worst feeling is a rejection. I think that's the second worst feeling when it comes to your career.
is being rejected.
Yes,
when you feel like you hit all the qualifications.
You're reading it and you're like,
yes.
I could do this. I've been doing this. Yeah, that's easy. But it's really important how you interview. This is where I learned about this whole interview game.
Mm-hmm.
And
talk about this interview game, because now that I'm kind of getting into like starting to look, tell me a little bit about this interview game.
Oh my gosh, it's very tiring, exhausting. You'll have your ups and downs.
Got it.
Yeah. And it could be very misleading. You think you rocked an interview and then you're like, what? I didn't get it. Yeah.
And does it kind of blow your ego though?
It does. Yes.
Because obviously it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not easy at all. And, you know, it takes a toll on you. I remember it took a toll on me in the beginning. I would, you know, try to be positive. Like, you know what?
Learning experience.
Yeah, I'm learning. It's fine. My husband's working. We're all taken care of. I'll take care of things at home. But then you just feel like, no, I want this job. And I guess this is where I have this competitive side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can do this job. Why am I not getting it? Yeah. So then, and another thing.
Do they even tell you?
Sometimes they don't tell you. Sometimes they'll ghost you. Sometimes they'll respond saying that you didn't get a job, but they can't say why. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just an automated email that just says that they didn't choose you this time, but please look on their website for more opportunities in the future. They would love to have you as part of the company, blah, blah, blah. Right? So it's really interesting. My emails would be filled with that, my mailbox, and then you become numb. Then you're just like, you know, you actually talk to other people that experience the same thing. It's actually becomes really funny. It's a humorous like experience sometimes, but you know, you feel a little better.
Does it build character?
Yes, it builds character. It makes you become resilient, right? Like,
well, can you imagine, like, for example, because you talk about rejection, right? Can you imagine, like, people who do this, like actors and models?
Yes,
and
that's my mindset after that.
Yeah, it's like they get rejected, and I mean that's the norm for them.
Yes,
right.
So yeah, I think this should be like the norm for everyone now, right? Like,
don't take it personal.
Yeah, don't take it personal. It just wasn't right. What helps is like reading blogs or watching videos or, you know, about people's experience, how to just get through it.
Yeah.
And it happens to everyone.
Now, my question is, I mean, don't take it personal, but you also want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward.
Yes.
Right. So do you like self-reflect like, oh, I could have done this better, or I could have spoken better, or like, and is that part of kind of your debriefing of your own self?
Yeah. If you can wing it,
more power to you.
Yeah. Like, wow. Like, that's awesome. But if you are those people that need to rehearse, like, it's really important. You got to rehearse. You got to practice. You got to articulate like what you want to say during an interview.
Well, because mind you, most interviews are only 30 minutes.
Yes. And you got to really sell yourself. And, you know, it starts off, you know, it's a game, right? You start off with your resume. You got to make sure your resume is on point or close to on point. Well, like someone's looking at it.
It's funny because we have a cousin that's in HR, and she automatically says if she saw a resume that had a misspelled word, it's like off the list.
It's off the table. No one looks at it. And then you have to, so, you know, I think this helps with my connections that I have and then the career that I've taken like in comms. I know recruiters will tell you that they will receive like, say, 100 resumes a day. They're not going to read those 100 resumes. They're going to read the resumes that are coming from managers internally. They'll see that if there was a referral. So you have to be strategic when it comes to looking for a job and find your connections. And then there's also platforms that kind of like just go through the resume. And if there's keywords that match the job description, then it can get in front of the recruiter. Now,
would you pay for your resume to get updated? Did you?
I actually did the first time. Yeah.
So the first time you actually felt like, I need some help with my resume. Let me pay for it.
Yes, I did it the first time. I never wanted to pay again because I don't like paying for stuff that I think I can do. Yeah. And then, so after that, and this is like one of the tips that I would advise people is whatever you're doing at work, write it down, update it somewhere where you can add it to your resume, because
You'll forget.
After you do something like a month ago, you're going to forget like what that was like a month later, so you can easily forget.
I have the bad habit as well, because I've only been out of work since May. And I was thinking of like, as I go into interviews, kind of what companies were my clients, right? And not specifying what company, but what industry.
Right.
And for the life of me, I couldn't remember some of my clients. and this was day in, day out, right? Day in, day out. And then I couldn't remember some of the clients because I wanted to make sure that I appropriately documented like what industry that I was working in instead of just saying high tech.
Yes.
Right. So I was like, what was the name of that client? And thankfully, LinkedIn, I had made connections on LinkedIn, so I was able to revert back. Yes. But you're absolutely right. I could not for the life of me remember some of my clients.
Yeah. I remember being in an interview and they asked me, oh, what platform did you use? And I couldn't even remember what platform. And it was a video interview. I just remember I was trying to like Google that, I think I just made one up. Just to get through the interview. But I couldn't remember.
Now,
and I was like, oh my God.
So it sounds to me you did a lot of prep work. Like you basically prepped yourself for these interviews, but then you also built the skill of not taking it personal.
Yes. And the other thing that you really need is still have that confidence. If you know you could do the work, just be confident. If you get the rejection email, if you feel like you don't fit, you're not the right fit for the job, you have to have that confidence in yourself, because if you do, and then they interview you can speak, and sell yourself a lot better. Mm-hmm. I think they can hear it in your tone.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's times where I was nervous and I'm just like, oh, I don't think this is going to go well. And if it's something that you're passionate about, like it'll just come naturally. You just got to like speak with a high level of confidence.
So now that you say you're contracting, do you like contracting?
Yeah.
Because you said you were like, I want a company. I want to be part of this culture.
Yeah. So I always have wanted to be part of like a company, like be part of the company culture, the company family. So in 2020, I got laid off. And, I've been actually really lucky. When I've been told that I was laid off, it wasn't like that day. Mm-hmm. I've had like a month or 3 months, to adjust and figure out what my next steps were. 2020, I got laid off. And then that's when everything was like really virtual, remote.
Well, COVID.
Yes, because of COVID, lockdowns. So then it was like interviewing on the phone. The third time. Yeah, the third time in 2020. And again, it was something new. I did feel the concern, like, oh no, how is this going to impact us financially? But I was able to interview. Then this is where I learned about contract roles. Like agencies would call me. And then I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And what I liked about dealing with contract agencies is it was less of a game. Mm-hmm. Over time, I actually felt like when I'm dealing with the recruiter, they're just like trying to sell me something. Mm-hmm. And at first I would be like, is this like fraud?
Legit?
Yeah, is this fraud? Like it doesn't sound like it's a real thing. Yeah. Because they're like, hey, are you open for work? There's this role. Do you want to take it? And it's like, yeah, but who are you? And they're like, yeah, well, we're this agency. If you want to take it, I'm going to send you an email, respond right away. It was just like very direct.
You're like, is this really as easy as it could be?
Right. And then they would offer telling me this is your hourly salary. There was still an interview, but it wasn't like intense, like a real interview with a company that you're applying at for a full-time job. Yeah. So I liked it. But the downside of that, it's a contract role. It could be 6 months, 1 year. Most companies, I think in California, it's only up to 2 years. Mm-hmm. And, again, it was during COVID. So, it could be shorter or longer. But I liked it because it gave me roles for really large established companies in the Bay Area, different industries, working with different people, different environments. And I actually got used to just like taking on a new role and moving on.
In. Yep.
Yeah. Jump in, move on, jump in, move on. And one of the pluses of being a contractor is you work your 8 hours a day. They don't expect you to work after hours. They don't want you to work after hours because they have to pay you overtime.
Yep.
Yeah. Versus like if you were an employee, there is that kind of like
Salary.
expectation, right? To get things done probably over the weekend or whatever. Yeah. I think I gained so many different skills by, I mentioned, I forget what platform I was working on. Yeah. It's because I learned so many different platforms, so many tools that I use in the role that I'm in. I build my network and it just looks good on the resume for the different companies I've worked at. But like, I still interview. I still connect with recruiters that contact me.
So just because you have a contract job doesn't mean that you stop interviewing.
Right.
So
right.
you're constantly like balancing that act of like, here's kind of the steady work through my contract.
Yes.
But I'm also interviewing just to see what other opportunities are out there.
So that's another thing. Like I've always heard this before, like even though you have a full-time job and you're comfortable with it, keep interviewing.
That's what I've heard. Like update your resume. Like, like one of the advices that I've gotten is update your resume at least once a year.
Yeah. And really see what's out there. Like be active and see what's out there. You can get paid more. You can work for a better company. You can learn new skills or work for a better team. Actually, when the second time I got laid off, like again, it was like where I thought I'd be there for a while because I was doing very well. But I realized that I wasn't getting paid as much. Yeah. So when I got laid off and applied for, other jobs, and then I landed a role, I was like, whoa, this is way more than what I made at this other company that I was like comfortable with and that I liked. So it was a good thing I got laid off. So I learned, so the 3 times I got laid off, the first one, my first learning lesson was there's doors open, take the opportunity to do something that could be different, you're uncomfortable with, and, just be, just take it. The second thing that I learned was you can get paid more and learn more from other companies outside of where you're at. Don't get comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did the interviewers ask why you left the company?
Yes. So they'll ask, and it was at the time where it was safe to say that,
you got laid off.
Like, well, I would position it in a way where, my role, the second time, it was not available here based in the Silicon Valley, and it was being moved to Texas. And so I opted out and didn't want to move to Texas.
Relocate.
Yeah. And then now you could just say you get laid off. Like it just happens to everyone. Yeah. And then, or now as a contractor, my contract ended. Yeah. But
What's your third lesson though?
Oh, my third lesson is the whole contract role and just being flexible. And then being able to when I get these emails now, my rejection email or, you didn't get it, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But what I also learned with this third time is like being in a contract role and interviewing with, at least with contract agencies, I do feel a little nervous when it's a full-time job because I'm interviewing right now for a full-time role. But when you're dealing with agencies, you can start off with what is a job description and what is the hourly pay?
Straight up.
Just straight up. They send it to you. If it's not the pay you want, you could say, sorry, this is like not the range that I'm looking for. I might know someone that's interested in it. So then, you can refer someone else for that role. But then you still create that connection with that person because you never know, right? Yep. You might need them. You want them to think about you. It is a lot of work, a lot of typing and emailing, but it's effortless. It's just your fingers moving, you know? Yeah. Like you can do it while you're lying down on the couch, you know, whatever, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, so I learned that. And then I'm like more confident. I'm like, hey, you know what? I learned a lot of things. I can adjust easily. I'm very flexible. I've joined companies as a contractor where they say I'm supposed to do something in my job description. I join, it's completely different. So yeah, so companies also try to figure it out too.
Got it. So with your experience, and then obviously you hear a lot of the companies now kind of doing layoffs, like would those be the three things that you would tell somebody is just kind of be flexible, be open.
Don't take it personal.
Don't take it personal. Like are all these just kind of things that people should keep in mind as they
and then just keep rehearsing, keep, you know, like because you do got to practice. Like, I don't know, unless you're like, maybe, I don't even know what percentage it is, but you could be that 1% that could just like nail it. And then you get the job, right? First interview. Like if that happens, like that's
more power to you.
Yeah. That's
great.
That's awesome. Yeah. But I can tell you, I know a lot of people that can't go through that. I can't go through that. Yeah. So you have to continue to build your skills by talking about yourself, the work you did, and like really be able to articulate that in a way where you can sell yourself, land that job, and be confident.
I totally agree, because I've been on the other side of obviously hiring people, and I only have 30 minutes with them. And depending on the role, right? If it's an intro role, you have an expectation of how it's going to be. If you have somebody who's coming in more senior, then you have an expectation of what you're expecting out of that interview. So like for me, when I interview somebody who's in kind of in that entry level, I mean, I expect them to be on time. I expect them to be presentable. I expect them to be articulate in like what they've done, but I don't expect them to be a know-it-all. Yes. And I never really expect anybody to be a know-it-all, right? You learn that you don't have to know it all. You just have to be able to be, like you said, flexible. You have to leverage resources. Yes. Right? You're never going to know everything. So I do think it's important, especially when you're coming in, to like have a point of view. Yeah. Like, why are you here? Right? Like, why are you here? What interests you? And be able to talk about yourself. Yes. And what you want to gain from that role. Yeah. Really standard stuff. Right. Even on the technical stuff, when we think about somebody at the senior level, you have some understanding that obviously they have the knowledge and experience, but now it's a little bit more on how are you communicating? Do we have a right fit? Will you fit the culture and the need of the team? So I think, you know, again, it's super important. And I think being on the other side, if you're not comfortable talking, it's really going to be hard to get into a team, because they can't just look at your resume. Right. So you have to somehow convey how you're going to be able to fit to that team. Right. Yeah. Right. So,
and even if you're the other person, you're the one being interviewed, you do have to like see if that role is really right for you, if the company is right. Is it hybrid? Could you really be there? Like if it's 1 to 2 days out of the week, you know, and yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that, because I started looking about 2 weeks ago, and one of the roles that came up to me was definitely in my realm. The caveat was they wanted me in the office 3 days a week, and it was a commute to South San Francisco, right? And I've done the commute to San Francisco in my past life
by train,
and I know that commute. Right. And, you know, and then the last 3 years I was completely at home, working from home, remote. Yeah. So the idea of going, and I've heard this buzz now that people are now looking for that hybrid model. They're not expecting you to be 100% home, but not 100% at work. So it's a balancing act on some of these companies. And this particular company, I got the feedback. It required 3 days. I told the recruiter, like, hey, that's a little too much for me. I can do maybe 1 or 2 days. And he's like, okay, well, let's just shoot our shot. And he comes back and he's like, hey, they really they love your resume. They love like the experience that you have, but they really want somebody to do that 3 days. What do you think? And this is kind of where you really have to be honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, honestly, I can't do the 3 days. It's just too much work, too much effort for me because I have a daughter, I have a dog. I'm like, you know, like
there's other commitments.
There's other commitments I have. And while I think this would be a great role for me, I don't think I can do it.
Right.
Right. Because then at some point I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. Because now I'm balancing all of this stuff. Yeah. Yes, I get this job and this is what I want to do. But coming in 3 days is going to take a toll, not just on me, but my kid, my dog, my husband. It's tough. It's tough. And
the sweet spot.
The sweet spot for me would be at least 2 days a week, something not so far as maybe around kind of more inland. Kind of like that Palo Alto, Redwood City area where there is a commute, but not so much of a commute.
That, right?
And so I just told the recruiter, I said, hey, I'm going to have to pass. And, you know, again, being honest with yourself, right? And I guess, you know, part of it is I do have the luxury of having a partner that I can rely on until I find the right fit.
Yeah.
Because obviously if it was in a different situation, I would have had to compromise. But I think it's really important to really like be honest with yourself. What are you willing to take?
Right.
And what are you willing to compromise on?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Donna has actually been a really good resource for me because I've never been laid off before. And so experiencing it I think, in May.
Yeah, I think I even gave you signs like, oh, that doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. That because you said that you weren't as busy, less meetings, right? And
less
I was like,
meetings,
that's weird.
And I kind of saw the signs too, you know, just because of that level of activity.
Right.
But I mean, I decided to take a couple months off and going back, but I totally see what you say.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm taking what you've told me, and kind of applying it because I think it really is like when you read the qualifications and the requirements, you know, you meet those.
Yes.
So what is it that kind of hinders you from getting that job? It really is maybe you didn't do so good on your interview and maybe that's something that you can work on. Maybe it's communicating kind of what you do.
It could be a lot of factors. Like I've been in situations where I was not chosen because they found someone internally.
And typically, I mean, they've already had somebody internally.
Yeah, they will go with someone internal.
But one thing that I do have to say for people is write it down, right? Because there's no way that you're going to remember all the things that you did.
And then do a lot of reading. If you're not working currently, like build your skills, continue to build them. There's a lot of things that are available online for free.
Yes.
And you got to stay, I mean, if you're going to, you got to stay relevant, know the latest tech trends and where technology is moving, what's happening in the valley.
Do you think it's important to like reach out to your network, like when you decide you want to get back into that workforce?
Yeah, I think it's important. And, you know, being active, like I try to find events to still participate in. At one point I signed up for Toastmasters because I felt like, you know, I was not doing well with my interviewing because I haven't talked to people and it was just on video. I haven't made contact with professionals in person. So I signed up for Toastmasters to gain my public speaking skills, but it was all done virtually, but that helps. And then the more you do it, the better it is. You gain that confidence. You learn, oh, this is what I'm going to do next time or say next time. And then like you just have to keep doing it. Like I think about like if you're a salesperson, like Peter's in sales, you try to sell your product and you know, you think like, yeah, I got this person's going to buy it. And then no, they don't. Like that's rejection there. Yes. They get so used to rejection, I'm sure, you know, and you just don't let it bother you. Just move on.
So it sounds, don't get discouraged.
Yeah, don't get discouraged. And don't get discouraged when you see a job description. If you see like 70% that you can do, but the 30 remaining, you're like, oh, I've never done that before. Just shoot your shot. Just apply. Because I've read this and I can see this. I don't know for sure, but I've read like statistics. So statistically, men will just apply. Mm-hmm. Women will not. They're like, oh no, I don't think I'm qualified. But men have a different mindset where
I can do that.
Yeah, they're like, I can do this.
Or I can learn it.
Yeah.
I can learn it on the spot.
And, I really believe they are more confident. So they say they're more confident. As a woman, like you just have to be very confident in yourself.
Don't get discouraged. Mm-hmm. Continue to educate yourself.
Yes.
Build on your network.
Right.
Be flexible.
Yes. And then, but if you get laid off and you want to take that time off, figure out what you want to do as your next step. Or if there's things you need to take care of at home with family, like use that time. And, it's hard because you want to continue interviewing, but maybe dedicate like maybe an hour or two in the day to job hunt. The rest is like how to manage things outside of work or job hunting, and then take care of things that you've been wanting to take care of. I can say for myself, I missed that boat several times. Yeah, there's still several things that I've wanted to take care of at home. It hasn't happened. But I think what pushes me to keep working is like, I want to stay productive, learn, and I'm young. I want to keep working as much as I can because who knows what can happen later. Mm-hmm. And then I feel that there's a safety net. If you're making money and contributing in the household and you can do it, why not? Yep. Right? Yeah. Yep. And then I did not like when my family would be like, what's for dinner? Mom, can you do this? And it's like, no. So I didn't like that job, the domestic job. Yeah. Like I was like, I need to work.
How long were the gaps from getting laid off to getting a job?
Yeah.
With each of those three.
Yeah. So, that's actually a great question because the longest I've been out of the job was 3 months. But I've heard people, and I don't know if they were more particular about what their next move was, they can take a year. So when I would hear year over year, I would be like, whoa, that's a long time. I don't know if I can do that. I would be worried, like even more worried, just financially, like the financial burden. But yeah, 3 months for me and
was long.
Yeah, 3 months for me was long. And I think it's one of those things where I'm just going to like just try to take something, see if it's the right fit for me. And so far, like I'm glad I've taken the different roles that I have. I think it's taking me to like a certain path later. I'm not sure what it is yet because I'm sticking a lot with technology and then dealing a lot with salespeople. So I don't know if that's something that I can see myself in the future. But just take your time. If you don't feel ready for it, there's people that I've talked to. I've even felt it like, you know what, this whole week I am not going to interview because I don't want anything negative. I remember that before, but now, like I just go with it. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, no, I'm learning from you in regards to, just take it easy. Don't put too much pressure on yourself and don't get discouraged. I'm only starting now. So hopefully, I'll find something, in the next couple of months. But I want to find the right fit.
Right.
Like take advantage of kind of where I'm at in my situation and just finding the right fit.
And one thing I do want to add is when you're not working for a while, you value money a lot more. Like, do you need Starbucks every day? Do you need to buy that thing? You really
are more conscious.
Yeah, you're more conscious about like how you
your money.
spend your money. You try to teach your kids about these changes, your spouse. Let them, learn from this, because I think there's times where we get too comfortable with like what we do and kind of live frivolously.
Yeah,
like,
because the money comes, right?
Yeah, it's always coming, and then we're like, oh yeah, let's do it. So one thing that I, and this could be a topic for you guys for like some other for another episode, is like when it comes to finances, like you actually realize like, oh wow, we didn't need all these streaming services. And it's subscriptions, and it's
so
like
that's actually one of the things that I did too, was like, okay, so I'm not working, so let me just kind of focus on what's going on with like again, because you're not getting money coming in, so you figure out, well, where's my money going now? And you kind of knew where your money was going, but you weren't. You were kind of like you weren't on top of it. So like in that first month, I looked at where are we really spending money at, and I was like, oh shit, I'm actually paying for this Audible subscription at Amazon that I'm never using.
That's like,
right?
Isn't that like $29.99 or something like that?
No, it's like $15
Oh,
something.
okay. Yeah.
And then I'm paying for like, we have 2 Netflix accounts.
Oh no!
because when me and my husband got together, I had my own Netflix account.
Right.
He had his own Netflix account. But see, these are things that like, and a lot of it's like these subscriptions. Because they automatically come out of your thing, and you kind of know, but it wasn't to a point where you want like you put effort in doing it, because what's $10? What's $15?
Right. You think it's nothing, but it adds up. And then like, that's one, like that's another thing. Like, that's why I said, like, I think people need to experience a layoff at least once.
So whose Netflix account did you keep?
His.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the whole, like you realize like, hey, yeah, it's not a lot, but it's wasteful.
Yeah.
Because again, convenience, it's not a lot. You kind of just let it go because money's just coming in.
You're a lot more mindful when you go out to eat, when you order food, drinks, and, like just do anything. Like anything you purchase, you're like, do I really need that? Do I really want it? Do you become mindful about your financial situation? If you have family, this is your time to teach them.
Yeah.
You don't want them to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one, like another, like I see layoffs as a terrible thing, but it can definitely, you have to find, be a positive thing.
Like a silver lining to that, right? Because it teaches you something.
Right.
Well, thank you, Donna, for joining us and kind of sharing your experience on the layoff. I didn't realize you got laid off 3 times.
Yeah, I didn't either until I was talking about it. I had to think back of my moments. And then, a contract ends. I consider it kind of the same thing.
Well, I actually liked, and the reason why is you really have a good perspective of how this impacts you, right? Like I saw that conversion from like being shocked to then going with the flow. And then now you're kind of, hey, it's nothing personal. Like I'm here to like, at the end of the day, enrich myself, enrich my family, and you finding the ways of being able to cope with like layoffs. And it's literally a part of our society today.
Yes.
Like you said, it's something that's bad, but like you can learn from it and it be good for you.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, Donna. It's always wonderful to get your perspective and like seeing that challenge that you rose above and was able to like go through, and it'll be great to kind of hear like a year from now, like if you found something permanent or if you're still in that contracting phase.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.